Hello and welcome to Insights, the podcast with your host, Joe Parnay. Join me in this deep exploration of our personal journeys from ambition to meaning, where we stop living life fast and start living life deep. This is a journey of waking up and realizing that our lives have never been about us, but about others. True success leaves positive ripple effects on other souls. I believe that success needs to be redefined from our own personal ambitious endeavors to be redefined as the value that we leave and give to others around us. Join me now as we begin this journey to deeper connections, even more fulfillment, some fun, curiosity, life, love, and all good things. Your deeper journey from ambition to meaning starts right now. Hey everyone, it's Joe here. Welcome to episode 39. Thank you so much for joining me. And today I thought I would share some insights into two worlds that we, on a very fundamental level, we live in. Two psychological worlds, two emotional worlds that we need to become aware of and know how they operate. For most of us, there's a significant gap. For most people, there's a significant gap between these two worlds. And the bigger the gap, the more the pain. The bigger the gap, more emotional isolation, the more loneliness there is. And so my thoughts are that the journey to becoming what I call a professional human being is to close this gap between these two worlds. So the two worlds I'm talking about are our inner world and outer world. And simply put, our outer world is the persona, the energy, the representation, I guess, that we give the world of who we are. And for most of us, that's not really the truth. That's we're being what we feel we need to be in order to thrive or survive in that particular environment. We're being the way we need to be as an echo of the conditioning of schooling, which is to fit in, to fit into that work environment or to fit into that particular tribe or community or group or wherever we are with other people. And of course, there's a significant difference between fitting in and belonging, as I've covered in previous podcasts. And just to recap here, fitting in is where we behave in a way that is not that is very loyal to an outer world that we make up in order to be accepted. So we're not being ourselves. That's fitting in, is being what we need to be in order to be accepted. But belonging to a group is very, very different. Belonging is where our inner world is accepted, and I'll go through some examples of what I mean by inner world and outer world in a moment. But belonging is where we're accepted for who we really are. It's where there's a values alignment. It's where there's a true connection, a genuine connection, if you like, where you don't have to be something that you're not. That's belonging. And it's the fear of not belonging is a universal fear of the human condition. So universal fear, we all have that. We all want to belong to something. We all have a need to belong to a tribe, a family, a team, a community, a group of some kind. No man or woman is an island, as they say. So as we look at these worlds, outer world and inner world, for most people there's a gap. And what I mean by that is that a lot of people get caught up in the trap of getting lost. Their identity gets lost in their outer world. They might be, just earlier today, in fact, I was speaking to a fellow who has been working in a particular industry for some 30 years. And at the age of 51, he feels quite lost. He feels directionless. He feels rudderless. He feels very low energy and all that kind of thing. Now, whilst there's many, many different ways of explaining why someone would feel like that after doing a role or working in a career path that initially was genuinely exciting and aligned, why is it that this particular person feels that way? Well, as I said, there's lots of ways of explaining it. So what I'm going to share with you is not the way, it's just a way of understanding this. And fundamentally, one of the ways of understanding this is that when we become slaves to our outer world persona, and if we're doing our outer world persona more than we're being our inner world persona. Now listen to the language I'm sharing with you here. We do our outer world because our outer world is not who we're being. It's not our essence. Our outer world is something that we do. It's a way that we behave, a behavior that we do in order to be accepted and to fit in. whereas our inner world is our essence, it's our being, it's what is essential, our essence, our essential selves. And when we and a lot of people spend more time in their outer world than their inner world, and are kind of trapped by that. And as I've said to so many clients in so many different trainings over the years, if you're working full time, the people that you work with full time, you're spending more time with them than the people that you've chosen to love and care for. It's incredible, isn't it? Isn't that incredible? Hence the reason why I started my own coaching business 14 years ago, is because I didn't want to do that anymore. I wanted to spend more time with the people that I love and care than people that I'm kind of forced to be with because I'm in a job, but that's just me, everyone each to their own. So our inner world is the essence of who we really are. And when we spend more time on the outer world, we get lost in the outer world. It's like a plastic version of us. Whereas the inner world is our inner wiring. It's our true emotional compass. It's where our core is, our values are. And when we have, a professional human being or a high quality life, is when we have people around us who we feel safe and comfortable exposing our inner world to. And by exposing our inner world, what I mean by that is where we can be ourselves, be completely unedited, unfiltered, and don't have to, hide behind any walls or hide behind any shields or hide behind any expressions or faces or anything like that. And when we have that, when we have a handful of people, 2, 3, 4, 5 people in our lives where we can be completely ourselves, and our inner world connects with their inner world, now you've got true connection. And when our inner worlds connect, that's where you can be yourself, be accepted, be belonging. It's all those wonderful things. And we can no longer feel emotionally isolated, or we no longer feel alone. There are so many people who are alone. And they're not alone in a physical sense. They're surrounded by lots of people, but they're emotionally isolated. They're alone on a spiritual, energetical, emotional level. And that's because they're too busy being something that they're not. And one thing I want to share, something else I want to share with you about this inner world and outer world is that it's when we can live a life or create a life or design a life or work toward a life where the gap between our inner world and outer world is very, very small. Now you're living the life of a professional human being. And what I mean by that is where you can be you completely. So to give you an example of this, one thing I've worked really, intently on for such a long time, since I started my coaching business back in 2006, is that I remember 2014, I might have shared this with you, was a turning point in my career when I had this corporate 2-day corporate gig that I was getting paid quite handsomely for to deliver. And it was dealing mainly with business owners and sales team members. And they got me in because of my background in emotional intelligence, emotional fitness, psychology, sociology, all this kind of stuff. And that was a training where I decided to bear or expose my inner world from the stage. And what I mean by that is where I shared raw, vulnerable stories of the journey of what it takes to become emotionally fit. And it was an incredible training. I will remember it for always because the feedback was overwhelming. And by feedback, I don't mean what they said in their feedback forms. I'm talking about genuine tears of joy, of release, of relief that I had from so many people coming to see me and talking to me from their souls. In other words, me bearing my inner world gave them permission to expose their inner world to me or open their inner world to me. We had a genuine connection. It wasn't me being a professional speaker talking to an audience. It was a human being, one human being in front of a room talking to 94 human beings. For reals, as they say. For reals, it was a genuine connection. So it took a lot of courage to do that. I remember deciding that I was going to be that. And if I had to relinquish my fee because I didn't meet their expectations, I was prepared to do that. I thought I'd rather relinquish the fee than be a plastic version of myself and get paid handsomely, which would have been nice, and then just feel really ordinary about myself. So instead, I decided to take a calculated risk. And so I bared my inner world to them and they absolutely loved it. And I got paid handsomely as well. Isn't that incredible how our lives take care of us when we can express our inner world. Now we need to have an awareness and the wisdom about this, because you're not going to be going around the supermarket and all the different parts of the world out there, speaking your genuine expression of soul, because you're going to upset and offend people. I mean, especially in this COVID environment. I mean, I'm zooming in. I am podcasting you from podcasting to you. That sounds awful, podcasting you. I am recording this podcast here in Victoria, or here in Melbourne, Victoria, and at the time of this recording, masks have been made mandatory here, and we're in the depths of a second COVID tunnel, which has never been seen before. We had 470 cases a couple of days ago. We've been averaging around 250, 300 new cases a day. Who knows how accurate all those tests are? I'm not here to propose an opinion on what's going on, because I can't be bothered with the oppositional positionalities and all of this stuff. So, but the point I want to make is this, is that I'm very aware of where I want to expose my inner world. And I'm not going to bear it to a parent from our school that I bump into at Coles Supermarket who has a different opinion to me about what's going on. I'm not going to express my truth about that, because for what purpose? For what purpose? So the point I'm making here is that you want to express from your inner world to the people that you care about, to the people that you love, to the people that you want to love and care for, to your closest buddies, to perhaps certain members of your family that you feel aligned to. Most importantly, you have access to your own inner world, so self-honesty and awareness of what drives you. And, in essence, what I do, this is how I do it. I don't subscribe to the outer world anymore, but what I mean by that, let me be very clear, is I expose aspects of my inner world to people out there. If I'm bumping into a parent, a classic example would be bumping into a school parent from my son's school at the supermarket or up the street or whatever, someone who I'm not particularly close to, say, or I don't actually know. I might expose an aspect of my inner world. It might be, for example, expressing my frustration of the online schooling portal, the technology, say. So that's expressing a truth, an aspect of my truth, but it's only a slither of my truth. Does that make sense? So I'm not there to talk about all my values and what I believe and all that sort of stuff, because it's completely inappropriate to a conversation where it's just a casual conversation with a parent that you might bump into, that I might bump into only a handful of times a year. I trust it's making sense. Whereas when it comes to close friends or family or close colleagues, I might bear more of that inner world. But the point I want to make is that you want to have a handful of people in your life where your inner world can be completely exposed. And that this leads to also my thoughts on being a parent. With my sons who are 12 years old, my twin boys are 12 years old at the time of this recording. Silvana and I, we often expose or show our inner world to them. And what I mean by that is that we're not afraid to express our emotional range. When I was a kid, I never saw my parent. I think once or maybe twice, I saw my parents argue. But other than that, all I saw was the positive side. All I saw was the laughter or the fun or the, whatever else. And sometimes the odd, little bit of disagreement between my parents. But I never saw the underbelly of the marriage. What I mean by that is I never saw the realness that's different to that. I mean, I saw aspects of realness. Certainly what I've just shared with you were aspects of the realness of my parents' marriage. But I don't know about the other side of things. Well, what about, I'm sure that my dad would have had, or my mum would have had, dark tunnels emotionally that they were going through, but we never saw it. So that they never exposed their inner world to us, which means, now this is not me giving you a story and blaming my parents for anything, because I'm not. Because I'm blessed for the parents that I have. I truly am. But let me tell you, but because of that, I had to take, until my 30s to work out what this inner world thing was all about. So what we're doing with our kids is that we're exposing appropriately aspects of our inner world that help them. So, for example, and I'm not, so I'm exposing my inner world to you now, which is a vulnerable place to be, because you're open to being judged. But what the heck, this is my podcast, and I guess I can say what I want. But let me share with you that, the other day, for example, I was frustrated about something, and I was in my room here, and I was talking to someone, and I allowed the F-bomb to come out just once. And it happened to be my son. One of my sons was just walking into the room as I said that. He looked at me and he smiled and said, "Dad." And I said, "Ship Creek, it's Ship Creek." You know that ad where he's misunderstood as saying S-H-I-T instead of ship, S-H-I-P. Anyway, I said, "Yes, hun, I was frustrated with something and I'm in the middle of a conversation. I'll come back to you later." And I went back to him later and I said, "Yeah, I dropped the F-bomb. It's okay. I'm not encouraging you to do that, but I'm just letting you know that I'm not telling you that because I don't. You're going to do the same thing, perhaps, maybe, I don't know." I said, "But I did it because that's my way of expressing frustration around whatever it was that I was talking about with this particular, friend of mine." So I didn't cover it. I didn't defend it. I was just explaining it. Does that make sense? So it's, and then I've also shared with my sons, when they ask me, "Did you ever get scared at school, Dad?" And I would share about how, when I was in grade 2 for about 4 or 5 weeks, we had this awful fellow, this kid from grade 6 when we were in grade 1, grade 2, me and this girl. This guy was bullying us. He put the fear of, the proverbial into us. And during lunch breaks, we had to stay seated in the corner of this little building because if we moved, he threatened to really hurt us. And he was on us for about a month, It was so scary. I swear to you, I saw him walking down one of the streets here near my house a couple of years ago. I swear it was him. And it was incredible, the trigger that triggered in me. I had all this fantastical thought of all the different ways I could cut and dice him and slice him and murder him. And I enjoyed those thoughts for those sweet moments for about 3 or 4 minutes. Then I had to let them go because I noticed it was affecting my mood. Oh, dear me. So that's our inner world is made up of darkness, lightness, beauty. It's made up of everything. Violence, it's made up of everything. And we need to acknowledge that inner world. The more we acknowledge it, the more we allow ourselves to express it with the right people, the closer the gap becomes between our outer world and inner world. Where we get to a point where our outer world no longer is needed, where we can just expose aspects of our inner world, and then we can draw the curtain back further and further, depending who it is that we're connecting with, you see. I trust it's making sense. So I hope this has been of value here, where I just thought I'd share with you, some insights into these two worlds that every human being lives in. And when there's very little gap between those two worlds, we're living what I believe to be a life of a professional human being. And to me, a professional human being is someone who is coming from love rather than fear, has an abundance mindset rather than scarcity. A professional human being takes full responsibility for their lives and their results and non-results, actions and non-actions. And it's a human being who is not afraid to show aspects of themselves so they can inspire others to do the same. And remember, inner world is our essence. It's who we're being, whereas outer world is something that we do. So that's it. I'm going to wrap up today's conversation. So I trust that's added value on some level to your life. And I don't know, just giving you another angle on things. Thank you so much for tuning in. Truly appreciate it. And of course, if you're digging this podcast and you truly love it, would love for you to go over to Apple Podcasts and rate 5 stars for this wonderful. I think there's about 60 odd 5-star reviews now, which I'm really thrilled with. So thank you so much for your support out there, guys. So enjoy, and I hope you enjoyed episode 39. Next week, of course, episode 40. My God, like a mini milestone of 40 episodes coming up. So enjoy, talk soon, have a great morning, great afternoon, great evening, wherever you may be. And thanks so much. Bye for now. I'm Joe Parnay, and you've been listening to Insights, the podcast. If you haven't yet, subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. You can now follow my insights on Facebook and Instagram. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'm looking forward to being with you again very soon in the next episode of Insights, the podcast.